Welcome to Common Sense Medicine. We are at podcast number 23, I think. So we've been going on.
Losing count.
Wow.
I know. We're
Quite a few.
we're professional. And today we have a special guest.
Yay.
Yay, Cameron. How
Yes.
are you doing today?
I'm great. Excited to be here. Excited to talk to y'all today.
Yeah.
Today I think we have a great one. Of course, Melissa's always here with me.
Always. Always here.
That's right. Whether she wants to or not, I'm like, Melissa, let's do an episode.
Yes.
Yeah, well, today we are doing a further, I guess, follow-up of last week's podcast. So last week we talked a lot about exercise, the benefits of exercise. But today we realized that a lot of people, I guess this week have been saying they just don't have time. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. But guess what? You don't have to have quote-unquote exercise at a gym all the time to really get the benefits of just moving. Mm-hmm. Right. So today we'll be talking about something called NEAT. So non-exercise activity time, maybe why that might be just as important, if not more important than structural exercise. We'll be talking about travel and culture because Cameron, that's why you're on.
Yes, I do have some experience traveling and living abroad, so I'm happy to bring that here today.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, when we start realizing like, wait, rest of the world doesn't have the obesity problem that we do. Maybe we want to pick the brain of Cameron here to see when you travel, what you notice, specifically from activities, specifically from culture and things like that. And of course, Melissa will talk about maybe what we can do here, because obviously we're not in Paris and we're not in Milan and all these cool places. We're here in Madison, Mississippi. And so there are things we can do here. But with all that being said, let's actually start off with what you've noticed, Cameron. When you travel, so I guess I'll preface it this way. The life expectancy in the United States has actually been going down. Even pre-pandemic. Pandemic caused a lot, but lately it's been going down. But the rest of the world hasn't really followed our trend, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's clearly visible. There is a difference, and you have to take into account just infrastructure and the way, these cities are a lot older, places in France and Europe. So yeah, there's just more infrastructure for walking. It's a very big walking culture over there. And you don't see people going to the gym a lot, but you also don't see a lot of overweight people. So it is mostly lifestyle. Diet's always going to come into effect. But yeah, definitely a lot of walking and just movement throughout the day. There's not really a lot of time sitting down in front of the TV. There's just a lot of activities you can do, especially if you have kids. Since I was an au pair, I got to, take the kid to the park, just doing little activities and staying on your feet. I think people don't really realize how much just being on your feet and not sitting down can have an impact on your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think here we are, we talk all the time about how sedentary our culture is, and a lot of that is because of the types of jobs that we have now and other factors, but it definitely does make a difference.
Yeah. Well, and so Cameron, since you are an au pair, so let's start with you. How long were you in France? Oh, it was in France.
It was France, yes. It was 3 months, supposed to be a year, cut short thanks to COVID. But yeah, it was a good 3 months.
Okay. And I guess you watched a family. What is their maybe daily routine that you've noticed?
Yeah, definitely, there was the normal just parents getting ready for work and all that. That's why I was there. But, whenever they would come home from work, it would be immediately, let's get in the kitchen, let's cook dinner. And it was very interactive. They involved their kid. They involved, mom and dad were involved in preparation. And then there was always, the after dinner walk. Which is,
okay.
I think that's great. It's family time and it's time outside and it's, time just not spent sitting down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about grocery shopping?
Grocery shopping. Yeah. Well, I think there's, a lot of factors that go into that, why it's different overseas, but it's definitely more produce heavy and just, yeah, they go semi-regularly just to buy the fresh produce, and then they cook and eat what they make and what they buy pretty quickly after. There's not a lot of bulk ordering and things like that.
Yeah. So more like a few trips to the market a week rather than just like one big trip and, kind of eating a lot of processed stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Not a lot of processed food. Lots of, again, fresh vegetables, salads, and like very, very delicious. Like I think there's, maybe a stigma that, vegetables aren't as good, but they're very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing, I'm just listening to you describe like this typical family in France, that just, there's walking to work, there's public transportation to work, there's coming home, it's, hey, we shopped a couple of times, we bought fresh fruits and vegetables on the way home, we're cooking it together as a family, and then afterwards, we're going for a walk together. It sounds so different than, in our family or even in my own family where like, hey, we drive to work. We come home, it's like, hey, we have soccer, we have this, we're driving kids everywhere. And usually I notice like kids will be out there playing soccer, but the parents are sitting in the car, like scrolling or doing something like that. And then when it's on the way home, hey, I'm hungry, the kids are hungry, let's swing by a fast food place, let's buy food, stuff the kids with all sorts of stuff. And then literally it's like, hey, shower, bedtime. Mom and dad are exhausted because they've been go, go, go. So it sounds so, just listening to what their life is like and listening to ours, it's maybe a small peek on why there's such a big obesity difference between Europe and the United States.
Yeah, I think there is, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, just I think that plays into the fact that life is just a little bit slower and more intentional. And I think that, you can bring that intention, even if you have a hectic schedule, a busy schedule, just trying to be more intentional and mindful about the small choices you make. It may be a little bit quicker to go get McDonald's on the way home, but you could also go home and semi-easily whip something together. Anything that you're going to make at home is going to be better than, what you pick up at McDonald's.
Drive-through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's, kind of back to kind of the whole reason that we're talking about all this. A lot of physical activity is always focused on how much can you exercise, when can you exercise. So when people say, it doesn't fit into my hectic daily schedule, well, that's where this comes in. We just need to be more active in general. So whether that's taking like little activity breaks throughout your day rather than, just sitting at your desk or in the break room scrolling, take a walk outside for 10 minutes. All that counts towards this non-exercise activity time. And, I think the NEAT time makes up for 60% of our movement.
Correct.
Whereas that maybe 30 minutes of actual exercise, that's a little more vigorous, just such a small part of your day. There's no way you can make up for, 23 and a half hours of sitting with 30 minutes of exercise.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like this whole concept of NEAT, it always starts with what we call metabolism, right? So people are always like, I need to boost my metabolism. I need to do this with my metabolism. But really, metabolism is made up of essentially three parts. One is the exercise that you do. One is the energy it takes to just live, right? So you need to breathe, your heart needs to pump. We have very little say in that. But one thing that we have a lot of say is this NEAT. So non-exercise activity time, which you're exactly right, Melissa, accounts for 60% of your metabolism. And as I was looking at papers and stuff like that, we started realizing that non-exercise activity time is one of the things that can help people keep weight off. And to kind of side note on that, we've been talking about this Ozempic issue where people will lose a lot, but the moment they stop, it always comes back. And people have asked a lot about why they always gain it back. What's that piece there? Why doesn't it click? Some doctors have asked, why doesn't it click? Whereas people who do lifestyle modifications, it clicks. Something clicks and it actually stays off. And I think what happens with lifestyle modification is that people learn to be active all day long. Right? They're walking with their kids. They're cooking dinner together. They're walking to the grocery store. They're walking upstairs. They're doing all these things. And that's one thing that not only based on the studies keeps weight off, it also changes fat distribution, which is why you'll see people are leaner in other countries. And like you said, that's in the absence of a gym. Like, when we go to Taiwan, which I haven't been in a while, thanks COVID, and, with 5 kids, that was, that's probably more, not so much COVID, it's trying to fly with all these kids. I remember, you're in a city of 5-6 million people. I saw one Gold's Gym, like one. But I definitely didn't see the level of obesity. And one reason, we can talk about food in a minute, but one reason is cars are really expensive. Cars are really inefficient. It's easier to walk to the subway. In the subway, you are crammed in there with a bajillion people. So it's almost like societally, it's like, hey, I can't be super big because first of all,
take up a lot of space. Literally,
yeah. And then half of it also is like, I will see my grandma. She would walk, down the flights, so three floors of stairs, walk about 2 miles to the market, buy food, carry like 20 pounds of food back 2 miles and up the stairs, and you're like, if you do that 4 times a week, you really don't need to go to the gym.
Yeah, that's a workout. That's just part of daily activity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which I guess, let's talk now, while we're talking about being active and being moving, let's talk about food, specifically portion size. I want to talk first. Like how much, so you've been to France, you've been to other places too. Like you just went to, where'd you just go, Cameron?
Panama in Central America.
And you went by yourself.
I did. Just a little adventure. It was great. It was amazing. Okay. Yes. And portion sizes to, play to that. It is very different. You're not looking at like a massive hamburger and like fries and a shake. It's definitely more... Again, like I think it does boil down to also like how you portion your plate. It's a lot more vegetable. It's a lot more grain and protein. And it's very fresh.
Yeah, so not as much processed, not as much fried.
Yeah.
Just all prepared differently.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is, again, it's something that we can do. I mean, and we're going to wrap this up with like, what can we do now? But it's like, I think we often in Mississippi, especially if you've never traveled, we assume that how much food you get at Georgia Blue, which I don't know. I'm not calling you out, Georgia Blue. But it's like, we assume that that's how much food you're supposed to eat at one sitting. But if you look at other countries, that's actually not. I mean, you probably feed a family of a couple people with
Yeah, definitely just smaller portions, I think, in general.
You need less than you think you do. And I think that's just a mindset thing. It's we're so used to seeing the portion sizes that we have that it's easy to not question that when it's put in front of you and to just eat what's in front of you.
Especially when we're all told to clean
our plates. Clean plate club.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, girl. I'll tell you a quick story. This week I had a patient come in and she has done phenomenal. She's lost a bunch of weight. And we asked, like, what did you do different? She's like, well, I started cutting out fried foods, changing food quality, trying to eat less. Because her friend had gastric bypass surgery and she's lost a lot of weight. And so when they eat together, she's like, well, why don't I just eat how much you eat?
Yes.
And then lo and behold, she's like, oh, snap, I'm losing weight. But she said something funny. She said one day she ordered a shrimp basket and fries. She totally forgot. And she's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And then she said, and then it clicked. And I was like, what? She's like, I don't have to eat it all.
Yes. I was like, you're right. Crazy.
So she didn't eat it all. But even when she did eat fried, she's like, her stomach had gotten used to not eating fried food. She felt sick. But just the idea that, hey, you know what? You don't have to eat everything. You can take it back home and eat it later or tomorrow. That, I think, it's just things that we're starting to pick up just watching other cultures that we don't have to, maybe we make it too hard.
We do, 100%. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's like mindset. It's what we're used to culturally. And I think it just takes like a conversation and awareness in your everyday life.
Yeah, like you said, just being more mindful about things.
Yeah. So world globetrotter here.
Hardly.
Okay, so obviously, like I said, you described life of what it was like for just an average family. You've seen, life in Panama where people truly are like walking all over the place. Here in Mississippi, we don't have the same infrastructure, maybe the same incentive, right? To walk to you're hungry, you got to walk to a grocery store.
Exactly.
You don't have that incentive here. You're hungry, You can
DoorDash.
Oh, guilty.
Yes. Let's start with the activity. What are some things that y'all think that we could do here to just increase our activity?
Yeah. So I think, walk breaks, just taking some time away from your desk or away from the couch. You know, we tend to just go immediately to sit down. For some people, I think this is where an activity tracker can be helpful a little bit, even if it's just like a good old fashioned pedometer. It doesn't have to be a fancy smartwatch, but wear a pedometer for a week and see what your average step count is. You know, it's probably a lot lower than you think. You know, you may only be getting a couple thousand steps a day if you're lucky. And it takes intention to get higher. And yeah, I think the debate's still out about like how many steps we actually need, but any increase in your regular daily activity is a start. So if you're only getting, say, 2,000 steps a day, intentionally try to get up to 4,000 and then, you know, maybe build from there. But just increasing that baseline physical activity is a good place to start.
Agreed. And I think, again, talking about mindset again, we have a scarcity mindset around time. Like we feel like we don't have enough time in the day. And so I think it could just take, you know, looking at your day and actually how much time you really do have, like little moments at work. Just every hour, maybe take 10 minutes away from your desk if your employer is okay with that. And just go for a walk. Like I think that's recommended anyways, to not be sitting at a computer. So yeah, just take the time that you already have and take a look at your day. And just, see where you have those moments. Like if you're talking on the phone with someone, talk and walk. If you're, just scrolling on your phone anyways, you know, that's going to be there later. You can still get up and move your body. Even if you're just doing the dishes in the kitchen, like think about those things. If you think about those things as, you know, neat, non-exercise activity, it does change things. Like it feels more intentional and you really feel like you're getting some benefit. Like, dang, I stood for 10 minutes and I did the dishes. Like I can be proud of myself for that. And just building on that, I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, dang, Cameron. I know. Where have you been? You need to be on the show. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think half of it is exactly like being intentional. Being intentional is half the battle. Like, hey, this is something you want to do. And then the second thing, right, is just realizing you actually have a lot more time than you think. Actually, this week I had a patient. We took out his phone, and he was like, "I have no time." I'm telling him, let's just look at the phone timer. You know, when tech companies are aware that you're spending too much time, and they're trying to give you digital well-being things that kind of help you get off, you know that it's a problem, and you start realizing that, oh shoot, you know, I spent an hour and a half on Twitter, you know, or 2 hours on Instagram. And like you said, you have a family in France that was walking, you know, in the afternoon, they're out there as a family out there walking around, enjoying the city. Obviously, you know, we have the neighborhood, but yeah, instead of being on social media right after dinner or eating and scrolling at the same time, which is like, you know, we don't need to do that. Try, you know, walking around outside with a family. You know, that's a big one. I think, you know, speaking of walking, during the soccer practices, when your kids are at soccer, which one day, Cameron, you will understand, like there's no point wasting gas sitting in the car with the car running, looking at your phone. The world is not moving. Like if you don't check your phone, it doesn't matter, right? Take that hour, or because usually Levi's practicing an hour, so take that hour, go out there and walk around, because you're just taking advantage of the time that you already have and using it in a more fruitful way.
Yeah. Even if you just take 10, 20 minutes of that time, if it feels like a lot to get up and walk for an hour, just be gracious to yourself and start small and then build on that. And I think once you start to do those things, you start to feel better. You start to notice it. And that's when it really starts to stick.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. And again, I think household chores, I like what you said there too. I mean, doing dishes, standing up where you're doing dishes, standing up where you're folding clothes. Like, we don't have to sit down and fold clothes. You can stand up and fold clothes. You can stand up and vacuum. You don't have to use a robot vacuum. You know? Yeah. These are all things that are so, maybe we overlook them. Another one I thought was like actually going to a grocery. Just listening, I'm just like, man, I can't remember the last time I've actually like walked in the grocery, actually bought a bunch of stuff. Right? It's usually like delivery. It's like, hey, pick up.
Instacart.
Yeah. But actually going in there, like, I think I was reading on there, one thing was like, instead of pushing a buggy, carry a basket. Grab a basket, load things in there. If you're in there for an hour, that's a lot.
Yeah,
definitely.
So awesome. Well, we have done some things together. Any closing? Cameron, you're really good. Or Melissa, too. Any closing thoughts you guys have on maybe, just being active and staying healthy?
Pressure. I think just, be gracious with yourself. It's small changes. They sound simple, but if you haven't done it before, it feels big. It feels like too much in your already busy, hectic life. So give yourself grace and start small, baby steps.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. Just to kind of add on that, I think, like you said before, just kind of looking at where some of your time is spent. We do tend to have a little bit more time than we realize. Yeah, pull up your phone to see where you're utilizing your time. And you'll notice that, if you are spending an hour on Twitter, like, you'll feel a lot better if you like get outside for 10 minutes and just set that down. It's good for your mental health, and we'll actually be talking about that more some other time. I think we'll do a whole episode on social media and things like that. But there's ways that you can incorporate this into your life without, just upending everything and turning everything upside down. But, little changes, easier than we think. We all have a little bit more time than we realize.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. And I think, to wrap everything up, non-exercise activity time is super important. Right. It is very doable and is very convenient, but you have to be intentional. You have to maybe find time to do it, but also give yourself grace, right? Small baby steps is the way to go. And I think exactly right, Melissa. Once you do this and you start feeling better, and that feeling will beget more activity. And really that, for the long-term goal, this whole Ozempic debacle thing that we're seeing, the question has always been, what's the long-term goal? What's the off-ramp? Are we going to do this for the rest of our lives? And I think until we increase our activity and change our lifestyle, that's the only option, a medicine for the rest of your life. And that's not what we want to do at all. And so, starting next week, I think, Melissa, it's Carly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is social media and mental health. I think we need to really touch on this mental health piece because it's getting kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It does have such an impact.
Yeah. So another guest. Well, Cameron, thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yeah. Hop back on again. We'll have a good time.
I'd be happy to.